we'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Here's your agenda.
First order, I don't think I can read that.
I can keep you going.
First order of business, approval of minutes. I've read them and reviewed them, and they're fine.
So moved on the minutes.
Need a second.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
All right, first matter on the agenda is small project 15B Court Street.
For the record, it is May 25th, 2016.
It is. So the proposal here is to bring an independent water and sewer line to this is Court Street 15B, there must be a 15A, I'm assuming. The resource area is a stream in the back, behind the house, and if you draw a straight line from the front of the house to the stream, it's 65 feet. So that's the short of it. I don't know if you want to give the details.
Yeah, right now, if you look at the plan, on the right side, that's 15A, and connected to that, on the left side is 15B. It's actually a two-family home. It's almost like two individual houses that are connected just by this one little room at the corner. And so it's an L-shaped building, and we'll be digging right through the existing gravel driveway to install a new 1-inch copper water service and a new 6-inch SDR 35 sewer service, just to create independent services for each dwelling. And they are separately owned. So we'll be digging just through the gravel driveway and tying it to the street. And the area of excavation is completely separated by the stream, by that L-shaped building, so there's no really possibility for any runoff actually to reach the stream. So kind of, you're on a pretty steep there on Court Street, if you're familiar with that, right down here.
Okay.
So this is exempt under the Wetlands Protection Act.
Right.
Jack, any questions?
No
No?
questions.
Chuck?
What's the exemption? Public utility,
Utility within an existing driveway or roadway.
even though it's gravel? but
They can be gravel.
Okay, because it does say pavement, okay.
Right, paved or, it actually says, the exemption says paved or unpaved driveways or roadways.
Okay.
Jack, any questions?
I would like to add actually one thing. It is probably a 2-day job. We'd be doing the connections in the street. First day with the police detail, and then the second day would run them up to the house. So the first day we would not be within the 100-foot buffer zone. So I would actually ask if we'd be able to start tomorrow, if that's at all possible.
What is it?
Small project?
Is this a small project or an RDA?
Small project.
So
Oh,
there's
small
no
project,
appeal, there's
yeah.
no appeal period?
There's no appeal period.
Right.
Small project,
Sure.
yeah.
Board, fine with that?
Yeah.
Okay, we need a motion.
So let's, Jen, because I don't have an agenda in front of me, what letter is
Except as a
this?
small project L, and then I would say approve as described and with the ability to start
All right,
tomorrow.
so two motions. The first one
Yep.
would be I move that we find this a small project
L.
under L.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
Accordingly, I move that we approve small project L as drafted with the pre and post as requested.
Just post, because there's no erosion
You want to pre,
control
okay.
stands by.
Okay, post and with the expedited starting date as requested.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. All set.
Thank you
And
very
I'll
much.
write it up. You can get the rest of it in the morning, or
Okay,
by
terrific.
noon, probably.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
So next is a small project, NACC 173 Hickory Hill Road and French Farm Road trails and signage. And I will get your plan in a second here. Yeah, they are. So Glenn's here to explain some new trails that the Friends of North Andover Trails would like to mark out in the field.
Okay, so the larger dotted line trails are the existing trails. The two with the red square dots are what we're proposing to add. The Hickory Hill Trail is actually already there. And actually, we won't need to do anything other than put up signs and put it on our map. And there's a little easement over to Hickory Hill Road in between the two houses. And there already actually is a sign there marking the trail entrance that somebody must have put there. The other one, French Farm Trail, follows, it's actually going to be following the sewer easement, so it's already clear. We may need to clip a few saplings or something like that. And but yeah, they're pretty simple. And we putting up the metal discs on trees to mark the trail.
Okay. We also, Jen, you showed me some signs, right?
Yep, and then Glenn's also looking for your approval to use some new signage on town-owned land, similar to this, to where
Yeah.
necessary to
Yeah,
mark.
we don't, right now the town-owned properties don't really have any sort of a standard trail sign per se. There are, there are those, I don't know if you've seen the blue plastic ones that the pioneers did like in the 80s, I think, with the white lettering. This was an idea we had to have the high school shop kids use their computerized routing machine to route, so they just basically like type it into the computer and it routes out the lettering, and then they'd have to paint them. And we'll either be using wood or the composite plastic decking material, which will probably last a lot longer, and we can order that in brown. So these we're proposing. This is just kind of these are just examples to show you what they would generally look like. We were proposing putting them not all over the place, but wherever there's a confusing intersection around the town trails, at Osgood Hill, Mazarenko Farm, and a few other places around town.
Jack?
Yeah, how many signs total are you talking about?
We haven't gone through and counted them up yet, but I would. What we'd like to do is put them at a few of the intersections at Mazarenko and Osgood Hill, and then at the entrances to the fields. Like when you're in an open field at Mazarenko or Osgood Hill, it's not always very easy to find where the trail goes in. So we thought we could maybe put one on a 4x4.
Sure.
But
I guess I'm in favor of this kind of thing, and I think I agree with you. I think we do need better documentation out there to be more invite the public to use our trails more. I would suggest that we approve signage on Mazarenko Farm and Osgood Hill, see how it goes, and then consider the remaining trails in town. Once we get a track record with you guys.
okay, that was my thought too, to kind of do a pilot at Mazarenko and see how they look and whether they stay there and if people like them.
Yeah.
And then
Sounds good.
expand out to other places in town if they're nice.
So, we're sort of uncertain. We'll start with those two areas and proceed from there. My other comment was those two, the French Farm Trail and the, what's the other one?
Hickory Hill.
Hickory Hill Trail. Those are two. Last I looked at them, which was last year, they were pretty well neighborhood paths, pretty well established. I think establishing signage and showing more legitimacy for those trails would invite more traffic down there to just a wonderful trail system that we have. So I'm completely in favor of that.
Great.
No?
The only question is, I heard you say you were going to use a 4x4, so the plan would be any place where you do want to put signage, you're going to put a freestanding post. You're not proposing to go on trees, are you?
In the past, we have put them on trees too. What was your thought? As far
Well,
as
the only thing with putting them on trees, I'm not opposed to it, except there's a particular way you got to nail them or attach them, because as the tree grows, you don't want the tree to swallow the sign.
Right.
So you'd have to. I don't know if there's an approved nail or a lag bolt that has a spacer. I'm not sure exactly. I know there is something that they use on trees specific to prevent that kind of
Yeah.
damage happening. I'm in favor of it either way. It's just whichever method you choose to use, just, I guess.
Okay, yeah, but I think we have aluminum nails, which are supposed to be, I don't know, better for the tree. And then when we do the badges, I know we just don't hammer it in all the way.
Yeah.
That gives it a few years at least, I guess.
Yeah, I guess
But that's something to
the-
consider.
That's the point I'm making. Eventually, it gets enveloped by the tree, so
Hmm.
just something to think about.
Yeah.
I'm all set, thanks. Thank you.
Joe?
I hate to say it, I haven't been on this particular network in many years, probably more than 5. And but last time I was there, I seem to recall that once you're on the trails proper, there are what I used to call blaze marks, colored badges or colored blazes.
Yeah.
To let you know which trail you're on. The thing that came to mind that I saw is when you have the trailhead sign with an arrow, maybe we put a badge on that to let you know that that is in fact the green trail or the orange trail.
Okay,
or the
yeah.
red trail.
Yeah, I
Just
see.
to let you know that this trail is in fact the orange one.
Yeah, I like that idea. Or even maybe coloring in the lettering to match the color.
Yeah, if you can color the letter, even better, I suppose. But I was trying to think if it was even easy just to put the badge. So
Yeah.
whatever it is, just so it does distinguish then what color trail you're following in order to be on that trail. That's it. It's a great idea. By the way, thank you for all the great work you guys do. You work pretty hard out there.
Thanks.
Done? Okay, motion?
So this would be a small project E, and I would, approve as proposed. They actually, we need to vote first on, they've requested a waiver of the filing fee.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous.
And I'll move that we consider this project to be a small project under the letter E.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous.
I further move that we approve the small project E as drafted.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
And just want to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. Jack?
I remember hearing this, but I'm going to defer to the rest of the commission. I don't remember the questions we had about the stone wall.
Well, they do propose, or we've recommended or advised that they've said that this was definitely available to use some tarps along the rocks there to make sure that no material, when they're working on the wall or, driving in the guardrail, that no material gets thrown or.
First of all, you should tell them how many feet of stone wall you're going to fix.
It's about 2 feet by 4 by 2.5. It's a small section. There's some additional photos.
And Bruce did confirm that that is the length of what was lost, that there wasn't much more wall there.
But not the highest quality.
Historically, way back there was more, but not as a result of this action.
No, they've been putting guardrails as they've been going along.
Right.
This is where you see the concrete barrier. That's where the guardrail was. Right at the end of the concrete barrier in the bottom right-hand photo. You can see the stone wall where it's had some damage, and yeah, it's about 2 by 4 by 2.5 that we're replacing right on the end, and the rest of it is guardrail where the concrete barrier is. It's a pretty small section of stone wall.
No?
Nothing right now.
Okay, Joe?
You may recall that I recused myself at the last proceeding, but since that last meeting, I was able to check on the fact that the company the town that I work for does business with Bartlett is immaterial with regards to this particular filing. That the applicant is in fact the town of North Andover. This is just simply a contractor. So I am able to participate in the discussion. So I was erring on the side of caution the last time, but that gives me an opportunity to talk now. Yeah, I understand the type of work that they're doing, and it is pretty straightforward. The only thing we take great care in is the fact that it is a drinking water supply, and we have to. I try to put it in the context that this is a repair in the roadway, adjacent to the roadway, to the result of a trash truck ending up in the pond. So really, by comparison, it's pretty minor. So, the wall work, and the only thing we ask for is that, any mortar or any of the chemicals that might be used in setting of the mortar, be kept away from the waterway and protected in some fashion. And then everything else there is some guardrail driving that you're going to be replacing, right?
Yes.
And that's all just driven in.
Yep. Exactly.
And, I mean, it's a rock embankment. Do we know that you're able to pound right through what was there?
We're gonna absolutely try to go in the same post locations with steel H posts. I think that's the only way we have a really good chance of getting the posts in the ground anyhow.
And what do you figure, a couple of days' work?
Yeah.
I mean, the post, half a day work.
Yeah. Most likely, probably somewhere between a half and 3/4 of a day for the guardrail and half to 3/4 of a day for the wall. And we'll certainly have, police details and full traffic control as well.
I'm all set.
Doug?
Just let me,
Go ahead.
so the Jersey barricades are staying? Is that my understanding?
No. What we'll do is we'll remove those when we install the guardrail, and then likely, I believe they go back to the Department of Public Works. We'll get them brought
All
back.
right, so the repair is more than just 2 feet then? The repair
About
is...
50, that's, the stone wall is about
Yeah.
2 by 4 by 2.5. The guardrail is about 50 feet.
Okay. I mean, at the last meeting, I basically requested, if you look in the sample photos, there were flotation booms there, they're gone now, and I just thought that because it's drinking water, and I understand the nature of the work, I'm not confused by it, but I just felt that we should be more cautious. It's only an RDA, which is, I understand that, but there probably should have been more care and caution taken, but I realize I'm in the minority, so I'll just give the minority opinion. And I would renew my request to require flotation booms in the work area. And that's it. I'm good.
Yeah, I think it makes sense as well, just for the limit of work, and close it in the waterway as well as with tarp material to prevent, stones and stone chips from going. But I think the boom is a good idea as well.
It sounds like two different acts. You want a top and you want a boom. You want both.
Excuse me, sir.
To put a top.
Yeah.
I heard him say they were putting a top.
My name's Jerry Raphael from Raphael Masonry, and we'll be doing the stone wall repair. And everything's going to be contained in the truck. We're going to come out with a piece of plywood and build a little platform so it's level, the area that we work in. And we're going to nail a 12-inch kicker around it so anything or nothing will be able to fall over the edge. Once we do that, we'll top the area, cut around it, and top it. We'll build the pilaster out of stone. Once that's done, we get the filter fabric and fold it up and roll it up and throw it back in the truck, take the piece of plywood. The plywood's for leveling the area, so any mortar, any chips don't go in between the cracks of the stone. So I'm going to have a full containment. The area will be contained completely out of a plywood shelf that's going to be built on the back side of the edge of the waterway. And
Okay. Any more questions? No? Joe?
I'm all set.
All right. With that being said, a motion?
Motion, if you so choose, I would recommend is a negative number, I lost the page, I'm at
3.
negative number 3.
So
With conditions?
That would be for them to, establish the tarping and then have me out for a pre-construction and then a post-construction when they're done.
So I add that to my motion.
And a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
All right.
Opposed?
Post.
One opposition. And it carries. Well said. Any idea when you're going to start?
Likely, with the next several weeks, we'll certainly give you a call and make sure it's at a time that's convenient.
I'll
for
write
you.
it up and send it to you, and then whenever, just give me,
is it a 30-day wait period?
not from an RDA, no.
Okay. Very good. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next one is 384 Osgood Street, North Andover Division of Public Works.
So this, did you give me your cards? You know you don't need to use the green cards, right? No, I mean, I need them, but you don't need to use green cards. You can use return certificates of mailing.
Just this thing, this one right here.
Yep.
Yes, that's fine.
That's not this one. That's the next one.
Sure.
That's not it?
This is give you the yard.
So let me pull up the plan
This
for
says
this.
North Pump Station demolition.
It's not the North Pump Station. This is at the DPW.
This is the
Right,
packet.
that's not the packet for this one.
This is the yard itself, right?
This is for right on Osgood Street at,
Jim, look.
this is a sewer relocation. The plan, if you have it, looks like this. It's a pretty straightforward in the parking lot, and one section of grass.
It's under IDA?
RDA, yep. Donna, do they have this in their packets?
All right, I'll keep looking, go ahead. I'll have it in somewhere, probably.
I can pass along, here's a couple extra, if you guys want.
I already saw it, so.
There's 2 copies. Let's look at. This is on the front of DPW. I think once you hear about it, it'll be pretty straightforward.
You want me to go with it? Sure.
Oh, no, I've already seen it. Do you mind sharing with Jack? I can share with you.
Okay, for the record, my name's Jack Sullivan. I'm owner of the Sullivan Engineering Group, and I'm here representing the North Andover DPW as the applicant for this project. Basically, there's an existing 24-inch PVC sewer main that exists at the front parking lot area. The DPW right now has some plans to do an addition onto this building, like a total renovation of the building. But in order to do so, part of the footprint of where the proposed building is going to go is right where the existing sewer line is. There'll be a future notice of intent for that building addition. But what they'd like to do now is they'd like to reroute the existing 24-inch PVC drain line as shown. We'd be moving it further away from the BVW in the riverfront area. As Jennifer stated, most of the work is over a paved area. There is a small section that's through a grassed area. There's no trees that need to come down. The BVW was delineated. The riverfront area was delineated. All the buffer zones are shown. In the area where the sewer is going to be installed, I'm anticipating about 8 feet to the high groundwater table. But the bottom of the sewer trench will be 10 to 11 feet deep. So as a precaution, in the blue highlighted area, I showed a temporary dewatering area. Now, they do have plans. This was kind of a rush project. They do have plans to get underway in June with this project. They already met with a contractor, Granisi, to do the sewer work. They want to do it obviously during the dry season, June or July. And the trench will be saw cut, and then soil will be removed, and they're going to be using controlled density fill, flowable fill, to backfill the trench areas for this project. I show all the grades on there, but it's basically pretty straightforward. Basically, saw cut the pavement areas, excavate out the soil. It'll be loaded out into a truck on that spot. You know, crushed stone bedding will be placed for the 24-inch sewer main. There'll be 6 inches of stone placed on top of the pipe, and then it'll be controlled density fill, and then they'll put down some pavement over it. That's really the extent of it. I do show for erosion control what I'm showing. I can't see too well. It's either a 12 or 18-inch diameter compost sock to be used for this project. And there's 2 areas that will be protected off of Wayne Street. On the westerly side of Wayne Street, there is BVW that's associated with the auto body there that will be protected, and also over by Kachikowit Brook, the BVW and riverfront areas will be protected.
Silt stacks are also shown too, right?
Yep. Yeah, I showed silt sacks to be placed in the catch basins, and then hay bales placed around it as well.
So some of the work, I mean, the majority of the work is exempt under the Wetlands Protection Act, but technically the small area that goes through grass, which just seems somewhat ridiculous because you go from pavement to small area of grass to roadway, is technically not exempt, so it is a full-blown RDA under both the Act and the bylaw, but
And I did send a copy to DEP.
seems.
Jack, any questions?
Jack, are you guys planning to tie into an existing manhole?
Yes.
What's the condition of that manhole?
Actually, this section of sewer is not all that old. I think it was put in 20, 25 years ago. It's an existing 24-inch PVC sewer main. So the conditions, it's in good shape. This isn't like an 80-year-old sewer area. It's
PVC in rubber booted manholes?
correct. It may have even been done in the early 90s.
Could you give me an approximate setback to the B-series wetland?
Could you zoom in on that area, Jennifer?
It's 25.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
more than 25, but for where where it originally comes out of is between the 25 and the 50, and then they're way out in the beyond the 50.
No more questions.
Al?
I'm all set.
Joe?
Bypass pumping of the 24-inch sewer.
Correct.
How do you propose doing that? And you're not showing anything on that?
That's what they were meeting with the contractor on. We know what they're going to try to do is the pipe itself will be laid dry, but when they make the connection to the manhole, the last connection to the active manhole, that they will have to bypass pump, and I'm not actually sure, Joe, how they're going to plan to do that. They do have a plan to do it, but when I talked to Tim Willett, the idea was to lay the pipe in dry and then just make that final connection. Sometimes they'll try to do it live, but it can be messy, so.
On a 24-inch,
It's too much, so
I
I think that they'll set up some sort of pump system and pump it up to the down gradient manhole.
They're also talking about, at least what I read, was they're going to do the work at night, potentially, for lower flows.
It's a pretty good sized sewer shed, obviously with a 24-inch. Well, actually, I shouldn't say obvious. It's dead flat. The reason why it's as big as it is because there's no slope to it either.
There's no slope.
Yeah. And again, low groundwater season is certainly something important here, because I think you're going to be in you could potentially be in a lot of groundwater out there.
Right.
We would think.
Right.
Don't know that for certain. Is there any, if you said it, I apologize, but I didn't think I heard it. You're not proposing to demolish or otherwise remove the existing pipe that's in the ground, you're just going to leave it there, and it'll come out as part of a future project?
That's right.
Whenever that time comes.
That's correct.
All right. I'm all set.
Doug? Motion.
So you didn't request any waivers, right? There's
No
no
waivers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just a negative number 3, oh, 2, I'm sorry, for work in Riverfront. And that we would definitely have pre-construction to inspect the erosion controls. DPW will be on-site monitoring constantly, I would assume, on this project, and then it would just be post-construction.
You just have to look out the window. You just have to look out the window.
Well, yeah, they'll have somebody on
No,
site.
you gotta be on.
No,
They're going to be there.
I'm only kidding. All right, we have a motion?
Okay, yeah, I move the number 2, negative number 2 with conditions as stated by Jen.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next unanimous.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, next one is 400 Willow Street Comcast.
Joe, do you need it? Oh, there it is.
Thank you. So, I'll pass. Here's the photos of that. This is another, again, because there's a small amount of work that's not within a roadway or a sidewalk, they have, they're filing the RDA, but otherwise, the majority of this work would also be exempt. It's almost entirely in pavement. They already have erosion control out there from another project, so, my only recommendation on this is some post-construction.
Question, Jim?
All work outside the 50-foot, is that correct?
No, I think where they make the connection in the street, there's a wetland right there at the road, but it's on the other side of the street, but I think it's within the 50 at that point, right?
Yeah, and that's where the straw wattle still exists from the
Yeah,
past project.
everything is still out there. But it is slightly within the 50, but again, that work is all within pavement, there's no work.
Had we known, we would have included this in the original wetlands request, but this came after the fact, so we had to start
They've been doing
over.
a lot of work out there. They've been before us for at least two other filings at this
Yeah.
point, and all of it's gone very smoothly.
Is that a section from the plan dated April 29, 2016? What we have up there?
Is it a section?
Well, is that the plan of record?
Yes.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is that it's highlighted, thank you for highlighting it for us, and it looks like everything is outside the 50-foot buffer zone, as marked on the plan, and
Well, I guess.
Okay.
it sounded like there was a belief that it went inside the
Oh, yeah, you're
50
right.
foot,
I guess,
so-
I
I
don't
was
know.
looking at
Well, we
it the
missed,
wrong way.
is this plan complete, is my question?
No, this plan's complete.
Yes.
It's just outside the 50.
I just was looking at it like upside down, so it is just outside. It's in the public way in the grass on the side of the road. And then we immediately dig onto private property from there.
Okay, I have no more questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, I'm following the same line as Jack, so you're talking Schedule 40 PVC, and you're outside the 50, and you're going to a vault.
Yes.
And coming out of the vault from there is not part of this filing. You already have connections coming out of that vault going, or you do have to dig out of there?
This is new, yeah. We're coming out of this vault, digging south toward the building onto private property, mostly in asphalt.
So when you dig out of the vault, you're going further away from the wetland, am I?
Yes.
Understand? Okay, good.
But there's two wetlands, so it's kind of confusing.
Yeah, I'm at the end of your run of the vault.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
We're very close to the other 50-foot buffer zone in the back of the building.
gotcha.
And we'll stay away from it.
All right, so you're staying out of it, that sounds good, thanks.
Okay, Joe?
I'm all set.
Doug?
Yeah, I got one question. You seem to have a conflict with the gas main that's going into the building.
Yeah, we're going to enter fairly,
Your depth and the gas main depth are about the same.
we're
24 to 30.
we're 18 inches of cover, yeah. 18 inches on top of the conduit.
So you're gonna be,
Gas is a little bit lower than us, but yeah, we're going to hand dig that at the rear of the building.
you gotta be careful how you wiggle that thing in there so there's no,
Yeah, they want us, the owner is kind of driving us to go into the back where the utilities all enter together, so I saw that where the gas enters the building also.
yeah, it could be tricky depending on how deep the gas main is.
Yeah, we're going to definitely hand dig the whole rear of the building.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. There's no more questions, I'll entertain a motion.
This would be a negative number 3 with just a post-construction.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jim.
Next one is,
Can I just- Al, can I have the photos back?
oh, sorry. Next one is 242, no number, 17 Mass Ave.
So, this is a tank removal project. Pull up their plan. And we have photos of the site.
Should we have the NOI form, but not the plans, again?
Yeah,
Okay. So we've got, do you have your, did you give me your receipts? So here we have plans for you to look at. Thanks. So I'll let you take it away.
Okay. My name is Bob Coluccio. I'm with Webb Engineering Associates, and we're here. I'm here representing the applicant, which is Merrimack Valley Oil. And currently, they've got 6 underground oil storage tanks that are single-walled steel. And DEP and EPA mandates that those tanks, any single-walled steel tanks, be removed by 2017. And so Merrimack Valley Oil is here. Basically, they want to replace those tanks with state-of-the-art fiberglass tanks. And that's what you see. They're going to go into the same location as the existing tanks. Now, if there's any confusion, some of the tanks are located on 1-3 Mass Ave, and some of them are located on 17 Mass Ave, and that's because Merrimack Valley Oil, at some point when that station closed down, I'm a little bit fuzzy on how that all went down, but Merrimack Valley Oil purchased the rights to the tanks, and so they're replacing those tanks are also single-walled steel. So that's why you see that there's a smaller tank there located in the easement, in an easement that was created on the deed for Merrimack Valley Oil to use that part of the property on 17 Mass Ave. The new tanks are going to be double-walled fiberglass. They're going to be set at the same elevation as the existing tanks, so there's no change in elevation. They'll have a concrete mat over top of them, which is what's there now, so there's no significant changes in impervious surfaces. And so this request for this notice of intent is basically to be able to do that work.
So the resource areas are obviously the Shawshene River runs through there. They have requested a waiver of redelineation. The delineation is from 2004, but as you can see from the photos, it's a straight shot down. I don't see any reason to go back out there. I mean, they've clearly marked all the resource areas on the plan. They are in BLSF. So for dewatering, I guess no material storage on site, correct? And then you would use a frac tank if you needed to dewater.
Yeah, if we need to dewater, and there's some indication from some nearby monitoring wells that we might have to dewater, I'm going to fill out and I'm going to do a notice of intent to the EPA for their general ground construction dewatering permit, and we will treat all the water with with carbon and frac tank and the whole sampling the whole holy bailiwick.
Has there been any testing on the current tanks that are there now?
The tanks are tested on a monthly basis. Because they're single-walled steel, there's a requirement to do a 6-hour test once a month. And so that's the current test.
Are the tanks leaking now?
No.
No. Have you tested the soil around those tanks, like test wells and things like that?
Well, if you look on the plan, there was quite a bit of studies done on the gas station in front, and so there was a lot of wells there, and that's what I've been using, and it doesn't look like there's significant contamination. Obviously, we will be sampling and testing if and when we start dewatering. So.
Aren't you required to test anyway when you pull out the tanks?
Yeah, there's the DEP regulations require that you do a site assessment when the tanks are removed, and so we will have someone out there with a PID monitoring vapor space, with the vapors given off by the soils, and then we'll sample the soils that we stockpile. We'll sample the sidewalls and the bottom of the excavation, and then an LSP will prepare an assessment, and if it's clean, it'll be filed, or if it's contaminated, it'll be filed as well in accordance with 310 CMR 40.
How long will that take to happen while the soil's sitting there?
What's that?
If you have stockpiled soil that's waiting for an assessment by an LSP, how much time will that take?
Well,
How long will that soil be sitting there waiting for the assessment?
It could be sitting there maybe a couple of weeks. It will be covered, it'll be placed on poly sheeting and then covered with poly sheeting when they're not, when it's not being actively, added. We're not actively adding soil to it, so there'll be no erosion. And that is on the plan. I have as a note. You can't see it on this, but one of those notes pointing to that sort of rectangle right there states that it'll be stored poly. And we have the hay bales. No work taking place in the 50-foot no build zone or no disturb zone. I'm not sure what it's called.
Yeah, no, I'm specifically, the basis of my question has to do with the fact that while the soil is sitting there, if it's rained upon and there becomes water, stormwater washing from it, if it's going into the shawsheen prior to the assessment.
Yeah, that won't happen because it will be covered with plastic sheeting.
And on sheeting.
And on sheeting.
Is there going to be any kind of check dam barrier to prevent, in the event that something goes wrong?
Well, they also have erosion controls around the entire site.
I'm talking about the low spot where it does go back into the shawsheen.
Yeah, well, if you look on the plan, what we have is, and it's part of the improvement. It's the only work actual that's happening in the 100-foot. It's kind of hard to see here, but you see the riprap.
It's to the
There's
right
like a
of the
riprap
page.
area. We're putting in a little knee wall, about 20 feet long.
I see it.
Where you see those flow arrows is where all the water from the site flows, and that's how it goes down into the bank.
So that's the area of concern. So.
Right, and so the first thing that'll do is we're going to put in what will end up being their spill protection, and that's there's another detail on this plan, but it's basically there'll be one or two valves that will be closed, when there's any oil handling taking place. Well, that will also serve to allow them to keep, if it's to keep water from running unabated down that bank.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, will you install that first then, before you do the work?
Yeah.
Because we can condition that.
Yeah, I think that's a key.
It's a good idea, and in order for it to be an improvement, the valve has to be closed, as you stated, prior to handling in this area, in the stormwater area, and then any spillage needs to be cleaned up before the valves open. And
Correct.
And so is part of this filing a procedure that kind of governs that?
They did submit an O&M. Is that in the O&M?
Oh, yeah.
The part about what Jack's saying about closing before.
Yeah, the valve is. I'd have to look at what I specifically said, but in order, I probably would be thinking more along the long-term range, and that is that it should be closed whenever there's any kind of a risky activity happening, and that's why I said that. I do indicate in there that it would be installed first.
Because having the valves there is fine, but but they need to be used properly for it to be an improvement. So that's
sure.
the point.
And that's with all of these oil facilities. They you try to make it so that you try to make it easy for them to operate properly, which what they're going to have, what they will have, is going to be better than what they have now.
Could you add that? I don't see it in here.
What's that?
That prior to all.
Okay, I'd have to.
Yours is more of a general O&M for the site level spreader.
I might have it.
Well, this doesn't have a number anyway, does it?
No.
So we're going to probably continue it itself. And maybe get that in the meantime. And my final question is probably my hardest question. Was the alternative of above-ground storage tanks investigated as part of this?
It is. It's there.
Page 9.
It's on the first page.
Okay.
So.
I knew that I'd say it. Well, the amount of property that's required for above-ground storage is significantly higher because of the setbacks to property lines, and So I know that whenever I go to a new site and they're looking at redoing the facility, I will always in my head look at it to see if that's a recommendation. And it didn't seem like one here because the shape of the property is such that there's property lines everywhere. And so once you draw off your NFPA setbacks, then traffic-wise, and it becomes, it didn't seem feasible to me. Plus, considering the location of the river, underground storage is the chance of spills from underground tanks that will be essentially eliminated with fiberglass double-wall tanks. And so as far as I guess the vulnerable part is where they load the trucks, but that is why we're providing that system for containment.
Right, but if it's above ground and it leaks, you have a means of preventing contamination of the Shawshene River. If it leaks underground, and I know you have instrumentation monitoring the headspace between the two layers, but if that's failed and it does leak out of something happens, it leaks out of the outer one, it just leaks into the groundwater.
The history of double-walled fiberglass tanks is exceptional. The risk when you're putting in fiberglass underground storage tanks is during the installation. If the installation is done properly, then those tanks there's no record, almost essentially no record of them having leaked or failed. And they've been installing them since the double wall, since the mid-1980s.
I agree. It's hidden contamination versus very obvious and a means to prevent. So, that's all I have to say about it. Go ahead.
I'm all set. Thank you.
I just have a quick question. On the tanks themselves, they're going to be capped in concrete?
I'm sorry?
Above the tanks, once they're filled, is the area around?
Yes.
It's going to be. Is there any berm? Is there any berm on the top of the like if there's a spill from the top of the tanks?
Well, the DEP UST regulations require that they have a 5-gallon spill bucket, which is which is where the hose connection is. If you put a berm on top of that concrete mat, it would just be a pond, and then water would potentially get into our spill buckets and get into our sumps and things. And so you really, the pad is not supposed to collect you're not supposed to collect storm water on top of those tank mats.
I was just thinking that if there was a small spill, that it would be contained by the berm, and the concrete can't be graded to the area that's there now? Because you have the water running off the concrete pad somewhere as it is, right, toward that swale?
Well, yes, it will. Right now, it's pitched toward that asphalt swale area.
Right.
And we'll continue with that theme because we don't want it. We don't want any. If there is a spill, we don't want it going the opposite direction. We want it to go toward where our spill containment system is.
So you could conceivably put a berm around the area, concrete area.
But it wouldn't serve any purpose. It's not done. You can go to any gas station, and you won't see a berm around that tank. It's going to basically it's going to, if you go to a gas station, look at the underground storage tanks. It's just a concrete mat with some manhole covers. And they're in some pretty vulnerable locations, and you will not see any kind of a berm because it wouldn't do any good. You have to shed the water off those mats.
Right.
You don't want the water building up and getting into the structures that are there to contain oil.
Well, to me, it's different than a tank farm is different than a gas station. To me, I mean, the potential for a large spill is it can't happen here, but I mean.
But it's no greater than at a gas station, and the threat is less because at a gas station it's gasoline, whereas this is number 2 fuel oil. It doesn't dissolve. There's no components of fuel oil that dissolve into groundwater to any significant extent that we can. I don't mean that there are none, but gasoline is a much greater threat to water resources than number 2 fuel oil.
I'll think about it. Joe?
I don't know where to begin. First of all, quasi in the business by running a public works department and being a fuel dispenser myself. And I do understand underground storage versus dispensing and where the break is. And again, on the filling of the tanks, I understand spill buckets, I understand double wall tanks and daily monitoring and leak detection monitoring that have to do with product inventory at least once a day and then monthly things that have to be done as well. So I think the O&M piece of that, as far as the underground leak threat is concerned, I think properly monitored under regulations, and which reports have to be submitted to DEP periodically, I'm comfortable with. The other piece of it, though, is when you dispense the product from the bulk storage into the overroad vehicles and how that is handled, and I think is where you might have been going. Like in a gas station, when you're filling the car up, if you're filling the vehicle up, you're on a concrete slab that's grooved, and the groove is, in fact, for anything that does spill or spills in any volume, hits those grooves and doesn't migrate off the pad itself. So what I don't see, other than new fuel dispenser location shown as a box with bollards, well, actually I see 6 dots around it, I suspect they're bollards.
Yes.
I don't see any protection of the dispensing area.
Well, that's what the area, that's what this knee wall that we have depicted at the lower end of the property. It's easy enough to put some positive limiting barriers in the area where that dispenser is. That I wouldn't object to doing that. But ultimately, and I've gotten I don't mean to bring up New Hampshire, but where they require positive limiting barriers, we've actually gotten them to relinquish that when we could demonstrate to them that we had a much more effective way of containing spills. And whereas those positive limiting barriers might contain 5 gallons, we'll probably be able to contain 1,000 gallons with with the system that I'm proposing.
Okay. With regards to the underground tanks, I mean, you've got some very large volumes, 35,000, 35,000, and 30,000.
Which is a reduction in the amount of storage that's there now.
But my question specifically is, and it does fall within our purview because this tank is within our jurisdiction, is buoyancy. I'm not seeing anything being proposed, maybe it is and just not shown to us, as holding these tanks down.
Well, that's only because I haven't presented to you the actual design of the underground storage tanks. Typically, we want to find out what kind of issues we're going to come up against before we go spending the customer's money on all that. But there is very certainly a ballasting system, and it will be dead men at the bottoms of the tanks with straps going over top of the tanks. And we do the calculations with full, complete 100% buoyancy. So, we design the dead men to hold down the weight of the tanks, and then we throw the cover mat on top of that. So there really is a redundant system keeping these tanks from floating, and that's a very legitimate concern, because what I've found in my experience,
I've seen them launch out of the ground before.
Sure. Oh yeah, and to be honest with you, most of the underground tank projects that I've done for these single wall tanks, you can tell they struggled with this. I'm working on one now somewhere else, where the tanks are like about 1.5 feet down because they hit water and they bailed. Another facility where the tops of the tanks were 4 feet above the ground and they built a concrete cap around it. So yeah, it's a real concern. But the state of the art and the DEP requirements and all that, we address them, and Okay.
So I'm very comfortable with your ability to look at the facility from a petroleum storage and handling perspective. I'm pretty comfortable with that. The things that we like to look for, more than like to, the things that we do look for in order to protect the wetlands is real hard civil engineering sort of facts and data, and where is the groundwater, and what are we going to do with containment, and where is the floodplain, things that are absent. I see a stamp as chemical engineering. We wouldn't normally, I don't think we have yet, accept that as a filing document. This is not at the level of NOI filing requirements. It falls considerably short of it. It's a great first approach. The things like, until we get into it and find out what we have and don't waste the client's money, are things that we don't deal with at this table, at this level. You know, we're giving a permit. And that permit's going to be the permit. And we don't have, I don't think we have enough information to take that at this point, to issue such a permit. I am very uncomfortable with the spill containment, particularly with only a pretty clear recollection of where floodplain is out here, because I've seen the 100-year...
The whole property's in the floodplain.
I've seen the 100-year flood at least 5 times, so when the flood comes, what the hell good is containment in a surface valving system? We need more.
They wouldn't be doing any oil handling during a flood event like that.
But we need, I hate to say, we need more on what that looks like. You know, whatever it may be on the ground, you know, maybe there's good housekeeping practices that we just haven't.
They have a
haven't
spill
read into
prevention
yet.
plan prepared by a professional engineer
Yeah,
that they've...
the plan is in your packets and their stormwater information.
And again, I'm very comfortable from a petroleum management, distribution, and handling perspective in the regulations all pertaining to the petroleum piece of it. But from a DEP, Wetlands Protection Act perspective, the plan I find lacking of information that we would typically issue a permit on. And I guess that's, in a nutshell, what I need to say.
That was, that level of detail is, I've actually, as I explained to Jennifer, all of the underground tank work that I've done, even where it's been in a floodplain, I've gotten a request for determination.
We've done 4 other fuel stations in town here, and every single one of them.
I told them it needed to be an NOI because the others were.
Yeah, NOI and very detailed information with regards to, you know, where floodplain is, where groundwater is.
Well, the whole property is in the floodplain, and that did I include the floodplain?
The amounts are on the data form about the amount of square footage. It's the whole project, basically.
Well, I mean, I certainly pledge to.
It's better than what's there now.
I'm seeing it for the first time tonight. I'll certainly review it, but I think my reservations I want to keep on the record and address them at the future meeting.
Can we?
Maybe I'm going to walk away. We have to review and be more comfortable with. At this short presentation, I'm not comfortable.
Can we come up with a list of what you would require for the next meeting? Because if it's groundwater, I have monitoring wells. I can show you monitoring wells. I can show you analytical right now.
Well, there's a minimum requirement for filing. I mean, we need topography. We don't have any topography.
No, there's topography on there.
Topography is on there.
Is it
We
dead flat?
discussed
We're just
that.
not seeing it?
It is,
It's
yeah.
so dead
I mean,
flat.
there's topography back near the swale. There's a big depression in the swale there.
I'm seeing spot grades. I'm not seeing topo lines.
Yeah, it's relatively flat.
You know, that I grade them. I kind of grade them out so they don't interfere with you know.
We discussed that when he filed that about the topography.
Can you see the you know, better?
You can see
Well, I can see it
spot
on the bank.
grades.
You can certainly see it on the bank.
Back
You
there,
can
you
see,
can see
you know, there's elevations all
Up here,
throughout the
it's-
property.
It's flat as a pancake.
There's a swale, like the concrete does dip down, but there's.
You know, there is. there's no
Well, again, I
showing
pledge to
lines.
review it, and,
Okay.
you know, maybe my reservations will be relaxed, but.
I mean, the spill containment I can't speak to. I don't know what's necessary or how it's done. I mean, on the other sites where, you know, they've been gas stations, so they're much more regulated. Again, the whole, as you described, the grooved edges. We had the mobile station on Winthrop Street and Mass Ave,
And Mass Ave right
actually.
across the street from me.
Yeah, they put a storm scepter in with a shut-off into the catch basin system because it goes into the street. Theirs goes down, their stormwater goes down the bank. So we have had, again, the protection at there being a point at which it could be shut off. Across the street at the mobile station, it's, I believe, a storm scepter with a shut-off.
That's my recollection.
The only thing I
10
don't
years
really
ago.
understand on this is, there's the photos show area where everything drains down at the back, but are you going to curb the rest of the
No.
the site? So how can something not wash, go off in other?
Well, if you look at the pictures, there is it looks like that there's a berm. That was.
It looks like it's actually a road. If you drive out there, there's 2 tire tracks that go in it. It's quite wide. It's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 feet wide.
Right, and that's the area where would my spill would go.
That would go, but then, you could fill that to a certain height if there was a spill, but then anything beyond that's just going to go right around the thing.
Well, that's where we pick a reasonable. I have a lot of experience with the EPA and with audits and SPCC plans, and the way that the federal regulations are written is that they don't have to do an SPCC plan here. Let me just say that they did an SPCC plan just to be on the safe side, because underground storage tanks don't have, unless they meet certain qualifications, which these don't require an SPCC plan. However, the way that I designed that is to the standards of an SPCC plan that could be audited by the EPA. And I've been involved with a number of EPA audits for spill prevention plans. I can give you references at the EPA and at the State Fire Marshal's office that we understand the process.
But as you know, we can exceed, at this level, we can exceed those standards.
Oh, absolutely. That's.
And we typically like to exceed those standards. We consider them to be the baseline bottom.
Right. Well, that would be where the way that the EPA, the federal regulations are written is that you determine based on a likely spill scenario. And so what they typically want to know is how long does it take you to shut off the flow, and then how much would be spilled. And usually that's in the 200 or 300 gallon range. And that right there can contain 1,000 gallons, and so it's well over design. Now, granted, it could happen during a rainstorm, but that's where they have to, they have to operate it properly, and there's no way around that. They have to interact with their system to contain spills, but they've been there, as far as I know, without any incident to that riverbank since I think the tanks were there since the 1970s.
There was a cleanup, a hazmat, but I believe that's associated with the gas station in front. There are 2 DEP files, and they're both on 17 Mass Ave, I believe. Donna had pulled them.
That may have been the front gas station.
Let's see what Doug has to say. Doug?
At this point in time, I don't have any further. I tend to agree with previous comments that this area is flat, and there are contours shown, but the other part of the area is so flat that it's hard to show contours that have any meaning. So you show arrows where the area is draining toward the spillway, but it's hard to tell whether or not you're creating that drainage swale.
No, that's all asphalt paved surfaces, which we wouldn't be even
It's hard to say
affecting.
whether that's the contours lead in that direction. From the grades you show on the plan, it's hard to that it would effectively follow the arrows you show. But I think there's probably some additional information that should be provided that would be helpful, and also give us a further opportunity to read what's already been submitted.
We do need a DEP file number, too, so in comments.
We need a file number.
Yeah, and I haven't gotten. I did send it in. I just haven't gotten.
They didn't have any numbers for our filings tonight, so.
Give the applicant some direction. We do want, you're looking for a civil engineer plan with topos through the whole site.
Well, I'm going to stop short on the topo piece, but if it is dead flat and we have spot drains, I think the topo's not going to show anything.
Yeah, it appears from the spot elevations that, with 31, 32, 30, I mean, you're a foot
Within a
difference.
contour interval, yeah.
So, you know, you'd have to be 1 foot contour intervals, if any.
Right.
And even those would be widespread, and whether they would form any pattern that would clearly define a drainage swale or anything like that is, you know, of course, if it's not shown.
The only thing I noted was there was some puddling in the middle of the parking lot in one
Because it's so flat.
particular
That
area.
wouldn't
In fact,
surprise me at all.
I did some spot shots on my own, and you know, there's like a tenth of a foot difference between where, you know, in front of my, you know, if I can stand up, there's about a tenth of a foot difference between this area and down here.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, it's not a waterfall going down to that area, it still puddles and moves slowly. So there's a certain amount of containment just by the site itself.
So what are you guys looking for, so we give him some directions of what you'd be comfortable
I
with?
mean, these are the photos I
What's
took
that?
today.
Was that?
These are the photos I took today of the site. I mean, you can see kind of,
The only thing that I ask is that they really need to do this in the summertime, because
This is the drainage
it'll put them out of
area.
business if they don't have, if they're doing this project in the winter.
Well, this is you just came to us tonight, your first time, so.
No, I understand that, I
We're doing the best we can
understand.
for you. You just got here.
I would have been here 6 months
We haven't
ago.
been dragging our feet, okay?
Oh, I know.
You just parachuted in tonight. Okay?
Yep.
If I
Point
may offer,
taken.
Mr. Chairman, my concern is your shut-off valve area, and my concern has grown since the description of the site has been that it is such a flat site. Your shut-off valve is going to easily be overwhelmed because the site is so flat, the water is going to spread. And there's going to be more opportunity for the shut-off valve to be overwhelmed and flanked on both sides.
Well, do you have shots of that area down there, like wider spread, because
Well, we know, you know,
it's actually higher?
we do know the area. We all live here, and we know that area pretty well. And, you know, we've seen that river come up over the banks and take the whole area out. We've seen it, you know, we've all lived
this
here
is,
all our lives.
this is the bank.
So we're not strangers to that river, that site. We've had filings on both the gas stations on that same side and across the street. So we're pretty sophisticated in the area. We know what we're looking at. So I appreciate you want to educate us, but we know what we're looking at down there. That shut-off valve is a good idea, and I think it needs to be broadened. And I think the reason for broadening it is, in my opinion, because it's such a flat site that the water is going to have, it's going to be less of a point source, and it's going to be more of a spreader. And my concern is anything getting to the river.
Okay.
That river's been taking a beating for years and years, and every chance we get, we try to help it out.
So you would like to see it possibly the whole back of that line and then
I'd like to
possibly
see-
turn?
Yeah, I would. That's what I would like.
Okay.
That's me.
That's not a, you know, showstopper at all.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add
Yes.
to that too. I was thinking the same thing, that from what the plan shows right now, I mean, in my mind, it doesn't show that those valves would contain anything if they were closed, that everything sort of flows that way, and she showed a low point on one of the photos, but it wouldn't, it's so flat, and it doesn't look like much of a gradient down to that low spot, that it wouldn't take very much to just have it spread out. And so I mean, a suggestion that I would ask you to consider is to show containment, show a curbed area where, you know, you would have to overcome maybe 6 inches or so, that would be a positive containment for the site. And Mr. Chairman, I do have one other point. I did review your spill control procedures on page 9 of your proposal, and I think some refinement on that is in order. First of all, the 7 points listed do not mention any valve.
It's on the first page. It mentions it separately. But I know what you mean. That's where you look for it, right? If there's,
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're looking on how to control a spill, you'd go to the spill control practices.
So on page 2, paragraph 4, is that what you're referring to?
would add it there. It's currently on page 1 of the program, of the O&M plan, that it's described, the spill
Okay,
containment.
I'm sorry, I thought I had it.
I mean, when we talk about, when we when we deal with construction sites, we oftentimes have a concern that the information is with the right people at the right time. For instance, the guy putting in the foundation has to know that it has to be 56 feet from the wetland flag B5, okay? So I think to that end, some mention of how to operate the valve, when to operate the valve, and the requirements. You don't mention the valve, and you don't mention the conditions that are required for them to close it. So I think any operator would need to know those two things as part of a spill control practice.
Once we got this facility up and running, then we would be upgrading their SBCC plan, which was done according to federal standards, and that's really I understand I can do whatever you want, but that's really where the whole nuts and bolts are going to be, not in an operation plan that's in the back of an NOI. It really could be something much more complex and.
Sure, but we don't have any of that in front of us right now, and we're trying to work with you to preserve contamination and pollution of the Shawshene River. So I think, well, those are two suggestions that I would have for that spill prevention, spill control practice.
Okay.
Pretty easy.
Question here I have, there's a picture here that shows the parking lot with a lot of alligator cracking along it. And it almost like there are some, I don't know if those are water stains or...
It's water stained because it had rained.
water.
Oh, no, the dark ones are not, I know what you're looking at, no.
Now, is this taken in the location of where that...
Yes, where that spill
Okay.
containment's going to
Well,
go.
it looks like it appears to be a swale of some kind. And is there any plans of repaving that or digging it up and repaving it?
Well, we were, I was trying to keep the project, to the area of the tanks for the most part, but, we can consider, consider that.
If you clean up spills right away, if you do that, if you have that practice of doing that, I would think that any migration through asphalt surface would be minor, if that's your practice.
No, but the way it's cracking, it's deteriorating fast, and it's going to be gone, and it's going to be dug up or chewed up. Any vehicles that drive over it or anything like that?
Well, we can put in there, because there's obviously some asphalt work that's got to take place, and so we'll patch that area,
There's some drawings, some pictures here that show asphalt that appears to be in reasonable condition. But this particular one, I don't know, it's because that's where the water flows. It's one of the reasons why freeze thaw and all that stuff has cracked that asphalt, or the asphalt's rather thin there, which leads to cracking.
Yeah, and it could also just be because it's, because the swale area is fairly flat, that maybe water sits there and might in winter time or something like that cause some stress.
It could be a number of things, and a lot of it has to do with the asphalt's relatively thin. It's not put down thick enough to support the loads it's taking, and it ends up cracking very, it's like most driveways people put in. They never put them in with the asphalt thick enough, and they deteriorate after a few years.
That's not that far away from being junk.
And when the town repaves streets, they go over these alligated areas, and they don't dig them up, and full depth reconstruction of those areas, and then a couple of years after they repave it, it goes to hell again.
That's exactly the assessment I was looking at, is this pavement failure mode is actually failure of the base beneath
Yeah.
it.
Well, that's
It's not the
part of it.
surface. The surface failed because of the soil beneath it.
Could be that. It could be,
It depends
a
on
combination of
what
things. But that's the area that I would look at, repairing or
So
fixing.
we have-
It's going to be strictly part of the swale.
Right, so it
So-
sounds like three things.
Widening of the
The berm,
Lengthening.
Yes.
lengthening, yeah.
Possibility of paving.
And then
Or
the
sections.
updates to the O&M or the So there's some kind of, and then maybe language that the spill prevention plan would, the SPCC would reflect these same.
Okay.
All right? So I need a motion to, any more questions?
There's any public, I don't know. I don't think
Any
anyone's here.
No? Okay, motion to continue.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
June 8th is the next meeting.
June 8th?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Donna, do you have any extra agendas over there? Or something I can write on, because I'm out of paper?
Here.
Yeah, you can have mine.
Oh, okay, I got them.
Here we go.
I'm good.
Are you going to keep that plan, Doug?
Yeah, can I
You can keep that one, yep.
The next one is 242 November.
Is another one kicking around the office? Or is it
You
just-
want another, you can have this one, because he's going to get me a revised one, and I have the electronic, so do you want the
I
full?
pledged to review it for the next meeting, but I'm not at the next meeting.
So you're going to review it ahead of time for me?
Here you go.
North Pump Station, DPW.
Oh, got your
This
mailings.
one.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Excellent. Paper galore.
The North Pump
I think I want to keep
Station, is that the
it.
one
You want to keep it?
That's the new
I get it. I'll go up there.
That's the newest one.
Yeah.
The
Here's
primary.
the old North Pump Station
Oh,
photos.
yeah.
for everyone.
You want to take, you want to share it? The old one by, what's it? The old, you want to take on the old one?
Let me get your plan up here.
Where you mean properties?
So these photos are the ones down by Butcherville?
Yes.
These are not the ones that,
No, no pump station, no.
because they're both on Great Pond Road, but,
Right.
okay,
This is the old one.
I got you.
I think your plan's buried in your NOI, I believe.
I think attachment D.
Unfortunately, I can't get there that way.
Sorry. Building there on the right.
Is it water or salt?
Water.
I think it's just
I thought it was
PDF
water,
to
yeah.
me.
Yeah, but it's talking about.
Oh, we're on B. Keep going.
Yeah, that one, no one's sewer.
This is where the guys go fishing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You can get started. I'll get there.
All right, good evening. I'll just introduce ourselves. My name is Robert Little. This is Kyle Gerlach, representing the Department of Public Works. We're with the engineering firm of Woodard and Curran to talk about the North Pump Station demolition project. And turn it over to you.
Okay. So just a little bit of background on the site. It's located on Great Pond Road. It's the pump station closer to Osgood Street, behind Butcher Boy, like you were saying. It's believed to have been built in the 1890s with several rounds of upgrades since then. It consists of the main pumping station with a couple of additions that have been part of the upgrades since then. The last round of upgrades were performed in 1980, or in the 1980s, adding the oxidation chamber on the exterior of the pump station. Currently on the site, there's a septic tank and leach fields, and there are 2 potential exterior fuel tanks. The pump station was decommissioned when the new water treatment plant was installed, and it's been kind of sitting there unused since. It's been an eyesore and poses a potential safety hazard to the personnel going on site. There's a lot of damage to the roofing and the woodwork around the wood trim and everything. You can see in I think there you have existing conditions photos. You can see the condition that it's in, and if you drive by it, you can see how bad it is, just how overgrown and unused, and it's an eyesore. So that's a little bit of background on the site. Our project, the scope of work will remove the remaining equipment and process piping in there. The process piping will be cut and capped at the penetrations in the foundation. This will be followed by a complete demolition of the building. That'll include the fencing and the building structure and exterior tanks. So that would include the approximately 1,800 square foot building and the 360 square foot exterior tanks and concrete pads, walkway and ramps and that kind of stuff. After the building structure is removed, we'll remove the structure's foundation walls down to below grade, as well as the exterior oxidation chamber. Those walls will be removed to below grade as well. It'll be backfilled and compacted. The exterior fuel tanks will be removed if they are found to be remaining. The exterior concrete transformer pad, the concrete walks, and the concrete ramps will also be removed. This will kind of result in an approximate removal of almost 2,000 square feet of impervious surface within the buffer zone. The final site will be brought back to grade after the foundations have been backfilled and compacted. It'll be loamed and seeded and brought back to final grade to match the existing grade. And all, like I said, all areas disturbed by the project will be loamed and seeded. The resource areas that it's in, it's within the 100-foot buffer zone. It's also within the FEMA 100-year floodplain and within the North Andover watershed district. Like I mentioned, the project will remove the impervious surfaces from the buffer zone. It'll also reduce the peak discharge from storm events into the lake, and it'll also increase compensatory storage.
Thank you. Ted?
Yes, it looks like you've gone through quite a bit of detail on this application. And it looks, I mean, at first glance, it looks really good. Have you done a thorough survey, and are there any underground or any fuel storage tanks on site?
It's unclear to us at this point. There's conflicting reports about whether those tanks which were originally shown on some older plans that we had have been removed or not. My understanding from discussions with the DPW is that we can include the removal of those tanks as a contingency within the bid documents. Alternately, they may test pit to determine whether or not they have been removed in the past. And that would also be shown on the final contract documents that a contractor would then bid on.
So we're not sure. And if there are underground fuel tanks, what's the procedure that's going to happen?
Well, we have LSP, licensed site professional staff, that would be involved and would be at the disposal of the Department of Public Works to assist in the removal of those and do, as the gentleman before us identified, there's precautions that you would take in terms of sheeting piles and storage of materials on site while they're doing the work.
Okay. Any septic on site for this?
There is, yes. I did mention. There's septic to, you can kind of see in the south-west corner that it is an underground septic tank with a leach field going towards the west. That will be.
Can't see the north arrow on that.
That will be removed with discussions with the Department of Health. It would be removed with a member of the Department of Health on site overseeing.
Are there any drainage pipes leading from structures such as septic, such as stormwater management structures?
No, I don't believe so. It wasn't tied into the septic line from what we know, from the information that we have. There's no current stormwater management practices on site. There's no catch basins or drainage.
Okay. We'd probably want a condition that there won't be any discharges, any pipeline discharges allowed from this site after demolition is completed.
We did talk about that, having an illicit discharge statement, letting us know that everything has been capped and cut off and there's nothing leading to the lake anymore.
Yeah, we can provide that, a post-construction illicit discharge statement that there are no illicit discharges.
It looks like a great project and definitely an improvement. what we have there now. I guess my final point is, and it may be in here, but vegetation, it needs to be revegetated somehow as part of this demolition project to stabilize the area. It looks like it goes back to the 75-foot, or right around the 75-foot.
So they are proposing to loam and seed, but what I had recommended to the commission, and I think maybe you were alluding to, was the 25 being, the commission has a 25-foot no disturb zone, that they would probably like some sort of additional shrub vegetation, I think, or allow it to be more natural, at least in that 25-foot zone upon completion.
No more questions?
I'll be real quick here, Mr. Chairman. I think it's a great project. I note that it's you consider it to be a redevelopment project. I agree. And I think with a good vegetation management plan and some indigenous species, it'll be a great project. I'm all set.
My question is demolition of the building. This building is, I don't even know what year it was built. It was probably like 1900s, I would guess.
1890s?
Original 1890s, but
1890s.
it's undergone a couple of.
So I mean, I'm sure there's some contaminants in the building.
Yeah, actually, it's identified in the package. We did a full hazardous materials assessment condition survey of the building, and there was asbestos and lead found, and the abatement of those contaminants is going to be will be part of the construction bid documents.
Okay, so that would be part of construction sequence.
Correct,
And that's
yeah.
going to be done for us at demolition of the building.
Yeah, they have there's a huge,
I saw it.
yeah,
Yeah.
section in there about hazardous materials.
We wouldn't be having a meeting if we
That's
had
why
to
it's
do
this big.
right now.
Yeah.
That's fine, that's good.
Nothing
Very
is not thorough.
I appreciate that. And he asked the question, we like shrubberies along the buffer zone, 24-foot, no disturb. We don't want grass to the lake, so we're gonna want,
There is a good tree and shrub invasive buffer, but I think they're going to want it to the 25 when they're done. I don't think it's quite that much. It might already be in some areas. And again, because we have the parking and the boat launch over to the right, we're just talking about the area where the building is.
And to be clear, would that be a condition of in the order of conditions?
Right.
Would we work with you or somebody else from the town to identify exactly where the delineation between certain vegetation and the loaming and seeding might be?
Yeah, it's just going to be 25 feet out.
25 feet, okay.
Usually work it out ahead of time and have it on the plan as the final.
You could
construction
maybe
document.
mark that as a zone of revegetation with native species to be, confirmed with the agent, and we can condition.
That's what we'd be looking for. A revegetation plan approved by you.
Yep.
and the last question I have, is this gonna go for planning?
I think they're granting it a waiver.
We've sought a waiver, sorry to interrupt. We're on the agenda for, I believe, June 7th, is that right?
Yeah, so that'll work.
Okay, that's it, I'm all set. Joe?
Actually, great project, really well thought out. I do have one question, though, is the intake works, the piping from the lake to the pump gallery. What's your proposal there? You're gonna cut them and cap them, or
Yep.
how are you gonna seal them off to?
Yep, those will be cut and capped at the penetration too. They currently come into the foundation of the actual pump structure. They also were diverted to the contact chamber, which is an exterior chamber. So in both locations, those will be cut and capped at the penetration of the wall properly sealed.
Excellent. You may have gotten into it in some detail, and I was flipping through reading the NOI, so I might have missed it, and I apologize if I did. Are you taking the foundation all the way out, down, or are you just taking it down to some grade, some depth below grade, and then filling the remainder in with material?
Yeah, that's correct. It'll be brought below grade to whether it's 3 feet or it'll be brought down at some elevation below final grade.
So we're not worried about taking everything out and then movement of water in with
Correct.
stabilization with it? Okay, thank you. I saw the assessment of all the, as you would expect to do, the interior of the building. Do we know, and I heard there was some suggestion there might have been an underground oil tank. Do we know what might be outside? And
We don't. We have very limited information on what was actually there, unfortunately. That could be part of the contingency, or the DPW may elect to do a little test pitting ahead of time to try and determine that, so we can identify for the contractors a little bit better what that might be. But we're unclear at this point.
Okay. I'm all set.
I have no comment.
We have to continue any for 2 weeks, maybe by then a decision we made on those tanks, and maybe you'll have some information on those tanks when you come before us the next meeting. So, need to continue, so I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I don't know, there's an abutter, so I don't know if he has any comments or, but
I'm all set. I just wanted to know what the plan was, and that's why I'm here. I live directly across the street.
We'll have more information at the next meeting.
possibly.
They'll never be able to put a building
Yeah.
there.
Say what?
They'll never be able to put a building there.
No.
Well, certainly, we can't predict the future, but it's town-owned property, so it's unlikely, but you never know. We
I'm
don't.
talking about in proximity to the lake and with all the restrictions and setbacks.
Right,
Well,
it is,
the irony is, if they had left the building alone and let it deteriorate even further to the point that they would want to replace it in the existing footprint, chances are they probably could put something there. But once they demolish it, the building is gone, and they've kind of lost whatever grandfathering protection they might have otherwise gotten. So it's pretty unlikely that nothing would ever get built there. But I would never say never.
Yeah.
And all it takes is a bylaw change.
I was
and
just going to
suddenly it
say,
happens.
we've all been around a long time. You can't really say with any certainty that nothing will ever happen,
there's
because,
no plan.
but there is no plan. The plan calls for restoration.
And by taking the building down, it does give you that heightened protection that, replacing it in footprint is not likely to happen.
Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
We have some,
We got some good projects today.
Final determination to support it.
What's that?
That it would continue, will you be reaching out or reach out to you for details on the next meeting?
It's June 8th.
June 8th.
Yeah.
they're going to continue though.
Okay, I don't have
Oh, more. I just need, I put one in the file, and I let them know that you had submitted it. It was in my info to them, so thank you for that.
It's yours, yeah, I recommend granting it. Okay, yeah, I got you.
315 South Bradford's a continuance request.
Request to continue 24260 North Way.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. That's the
Who
only one.
who motioned it? I'm sorry, I missed.
Yeah.
Alan
I second it.
and
Jack,
Jack.
I'm sorry.
So,
Jack and Julie.
okay, got it.
NACC number 137, COC request for 240 Charles Street.
So they did the easement work. They did go out and they used mats, but there was a couple areas that needed to be raked out. But other than that, everything looks good out there. The seed that is in the staging area hasn't necessarily grown in yet, but it's also seed put over. If you remember, most of what the sewer easement is on is like big rock, and then there's like a layer of loam over it. So they seeded that layer of loam. I'm sure we'll get some sort of vegetation up there, but
It's not going to last long.
I'm not too worried about it, and there's knotweed everywhere, so.
I can see, huh?
But I walked the whole easement, they removed the erosion controls, we got the final report. Only a final report was required from the environmental scientists, that work had been done in compliance, so I'm good. It's a
Questions?
NACC number.
No questions.
No?
No questions.
Joe?
Just for the record, in 1986, when I told the landscaper you couldn't get hydroseed to grow on this particular ground, that was on a Friday. When it came back on a Monday, there was a chia pet, which used to be my D8 bulldozer, covered in freshly germinated grass. You get it to grow on a bulldozer.
Yeah, so.
Didn't last long.
They said they would reseed it if it didn't come in, but
You were using
the knotweed will be in by then.
Were you?
Doug?
No questions.
Motion?
What are you looking for from?
COC.
COC.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. 24295, PCOC request for 164 Bridges Lane.
So this has a COC for the house itself, which was filed for separately. So I don't see any reason why we wouldn't release it. And Heidi did go out just to make sure that, there was no brush dumping or any crazy violations, but there's nothing. So this is just releasing it from the two orders that reference it. I forget, because is there 95 and 140 because they switched the names of the streets and all of that, but 140 references 95, and this house is mentioned in 95, so
So we're all set, right?
we're all set.
Motion?
I guess just understanding what the orders were is more confusing than anything.
These orders were from, well, 24295 was, if I had
I
to
think
make a guess.
95 actually became Vestway,
Yes.
and
that's what-
140 is actually Bridges. So,
And those were just orders for the roadways?
correct.
Yeah, okay.
So they can both, I'm fine with
So moved.
So we released them from both orders?
PCOCs from 95 and 140.
We have a motion, we need a second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that changed. That was for both numbers.
Right, yes, that was the intention.
All right, next one is 242-1261, enforcement order, Katuah Street.
I'm going to recuse, but I'll just...
Right. So we're just waiting for the as-built. Ben was struggling, they lost somebody, an engineer, and we're just struggling to get somebody to do the work.
They lost somebody, can't find them?
Well, lost him as in no longer with them, went to
Oh,
work
the North
someplace
Andover.
else, so they're short an engineer and short.
Moved on is what you're saying?
I have no idea, but all I know is he was working on getting it today. I thought I was gonna have it, and then I didn't.
So what do you need?
So I guess we need to continue for 2 more weeks.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
No, one abstention.
One abstention.
Way to go, Donna, way to go, way to work, kid.
So
Since she's a lot sharper, but she comes in late.
I spoke to Mr. Smith's lawyer on the enforcement order this week, and it's a
I'm sorry, go ahead.
little early,
Go ahead,
but
proceed.
the enforcement order 146 Main Street, so he went and did the work. We issued him an enforcement order saying, we realized the work was not done in compliance with plumbing and all sorts of things. But that being said, so something else is going to need to happen out there. So we told him not to do any other work on it. We told him to pick up the soil pile and the debris. He did not, and we've been fining him $100 a day since May 9th. I asked him to come tonight because I think this could easily be addressed. He's saying he's leaving the site open because he wants, before he covers it back up, that he wants someone to confirm. And I said, well, you could talk to the commission about that, and then we can talk about other ways to deal with the mess that's out there. Erosion control, covering the soil pile. There could be all kinds of things, but nobody's here to discuss. So with that said, we just continue to fine, I guess, in my opinion, that unless someone else...
I'm not asking you to carry his pail of water, but he's leaving it uncovered for us to confirm what?
Not us to confirm, he, like an engineer, there's
all right.
still discussions, it's just still litigation between Sutton Pond and him. So until something gets decided about what he's done, and we noted this at the last meeting, nothing is still leaking from the system.
But all we've asked, we didn't ask for an as-built, and we didn't
No.
ask for system analysis, we asked for the debris to be removed. That's all we
Correct.
asked for.
That's it.
That was the extent of our request, just clean up the dump.
Well, again, it's not an NOI, it's not a project, it's an enforcement order. I mean, if he were to contain it and somehow prevent erosion control, I mean, he's got to do something.
That's what I had offered that to Lou, and Lou said, well, if the whole commission decides that just containing the mess with erosion control or covering the piles is fine too, then Lou said that could be fine, but he hasn't done anything.
Come in and ask for it.
Call me crazy, but it would take half the time to clean the stuff up as it would to establish erosion controls to contain it.
No, it's a localized pile, you can just put 3 or 4 hay bales around it, pretty straightforward.
He didn't come to visit or talk to Jen for
2 weeks.
way to fix it.
So,
He was looking for an abatement on the
all right, so
fines.
what are you asking us to do here?
But we're not gonna do anything.
Well, I
He's
wanted
not
him
here.
to come.
All right, so they're not here, so.
Next matter.
I moved to adjourn.
So we take, so no one
We know
answered,
the hell to talk about.
just for the record, no one answered your request to appear.
Well, I did speak to the attorney. I told him we would be here tonight, and,
But they're not here.
right.
Okay, they're not here, we take no action.
So we asked him to stop the sewage discharge. He did it, but in a way that disturbed,
He wasn't
Our
supposed to do any
resources.
work
No, we
outside
didn't-
of the
we didn't ask
contained
him to
building.
do anything.
we asked him to stop.
We asked him to stop
We asked him to cease and
causing a
desist. We didn't ask
discharge,
him to do any
right.
work.
Stop the discharge is what we asked him
Right.
to do.
And then we asked
He did
him,
it in a way that-
and we said,
Without
do not do any work
Right.
outside the building without a permit from the commission. The work was done outside the building, and now all the material storage, the soil and the debris are outside the building.
Without a permit.
So all we asked
So
was just
the
to clear.
attorney's answer to you was see you in court.
And with a
Oh,
separate
no, he filed before he
enforcement,
became-
and
So,
doing it.
yeah, so no.
That was
Because,
the,
I mean, he's not gonna pay the fine.
Well, we don't know what he's not gonna do, but we already know what he didn't do.
Right.
Well, he isn't doing anything, and he doesn't intend to do anything.
Well, we're not gonna do anything either.
And,
yeah, this is not about money, it's not about beating him up. What we really have is a discharge of sewage. The worst of it's taken care of. Until the soil migrates, we don't really have an imminent threat.
No,
But we have a violation for sure.
right.
You know, if he wants to play Mexican standoff, we can play this forever.
So say we take no action.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Take no action.
Okay, so take no
action be
action.
taken.
Then
In the
we're,
meantime, he's satisfied, we stop the bleeding.
Yeah.
Correct.
I recommend we not do that anyway.
Until the next one.
Until next one.
Until it freezes this way.
Yeah.
Oh, no, he's gonna backfill it.
No.
Okay, we need a motion to adjourn.
I'll move that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
All right.
Opposed?